Good morning, Encounter Church. It is great to see you all today. We will be singing a couple worship songs, praising our God. We would love for you to stand up and worship with us. Your word is a lamp unto my feet. Your way is the only way for me. It's a narrow road that leads to life, but I want to be on it. It's a narrow road, but the mercy's wide, 'cause you're good in your promise. I take you at your word. If you said it, I'll believe it. I've seen how good it works. If you started, you'll complete it. I'll take you at your word. You spoke, and the chaos fell in line. Well, I know, 'cause I've seen it in my life. It's a narrow road that leads to life, but I want to be on it. It's a narrow road, and the tide is high, but you're parting the waters. I'll take you at your word. If you said it, I'll believe it. I've seen how good it works. If you started, you'll complete it. I'll take you at your word. If you said it, I'll believe it. I've seen how good it works. If you started, you'll complete it. I'll take you at your word. You're good on your promise. You're good on your promise. You said your love will never give up. You said your grace is always enough. You said your heart will never forget or forsake me. You said I'm saved. You call me yours. You said my future's full of your hope. You've never failed, so I know that you'll never fail me. You said your love would never give up. You said your grace is always enough. You said your heart would never forget or forsake me. Oh, you said I'm saved. You call me yours. You said my future's full of your hope. You've never failed, so I know that you'll never fail me. I'll take you at your word. If you said it, I'll believe it. I've seen how good it works. If you started, you'll complete it. I'll take you at your word. If you said it, I'll believe it. I've seen how good it works. If you started, you'll complete it. I'll take you at your word. You're good on your promise. You're good on your promise. I'll take you at your word. I'm calling on the God of Jacob, whose love endures through generations. I know that you will keep your covenant. I'm calling on the God of Moses, the one who opened up the ocean. I need you now to do the same thing for me. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness, on your faithfulness.
I'm calling on the God of Mary, whose favor rests upon the lowly. I know with you all things are possible. I'm calling on the God of David, who made a shepherd boy courageous.
I may not face Goliath, but I've got my own giants. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness, on your faithfulness. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness, on your faithfulness. Your children, you hear your children now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You answered prayers back then, and you will answer now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You were providing then. You are providing now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You moved in power then. God move in power now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You were a healer then. You are a healer now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You were a Savior then. You are a Savior now. You are the same God. You are the same God. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness, on your faithfulness. Oh God, my God, I need you. God, my God, I need you now. How I need
now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness, on your faithfulness.
Darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. To the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. In the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the church of Christ was born, then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not faint. By his blood and in his name, in his freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
Jesus is the King of Kings, and so when it feels like something else is dominant over your life, when something else feels like it's taking over, This is just a reminder that there is a king above that, and he sits in control of everything. He is the ultimate King of Kings. So that's why we're here. That's why we worship him, and that's why we give our struggles and our troubles and our hard times all to him. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're so excited to see you, and we're getting ready to continue our series, This is the Way. Chris has an awesome message for you today, so we're looking forward to that. If you want to join us next week to hear these awesome musicians, this awesome band play, and just a time to worship God and take communion together, from time to time we have what's called a worship and communion night, and that's going to take place next Sunday. And so if you want to register, you can scan that barcode or QR code up there, and we'd love to have you. We'd love you to join us. I'm going to invite you to go ahead and have a seat, and Chris will be up in just a second.
Good morning. Welcome to Encounter Church. My name is Chris Causey. I'm lead pastor here, and like Dallas said, I'm excited to be able to continue a series that we kicked off last week with a really powerful message from Dallas called This is the Way. And it's over the course of this month, we want to look at 4 stories that Jesus told that we believe have the power to transform our own personal story and our own life. And to kickstart it, I want to tell you a story from history. I love history, and there's parts of history that we just simply don't know it, and we should know it, and this is one of them. So this is an island off the coast of South America. What you're looking at is not something unique geographically, geologically. It is not some white rock. That is bird poo. If you want to be really specific, it's guano, okay? And guano was the central kind of tension point for almost a handful of international wars that were on the precipice of breaking out at the end of the 1800s. Like, this is just one of those things that you should know, that wars almost happened between countries because of bird poo at the end of the 1800s. Like, that's just something, you might end up on Jeopardy, you might end up on a cruise ship with trivia or something, but this is going to pay off. But this is a thing that you don't get taught in school. Like, no one ever said, hey, did you hear about that time Spain and Portugal almost went to war over the island off the coast of South America because they were obsessed with bird poo? You're like, no, I did not. Tell me more, please. Right? And so it actually happened. But the reason this was such a tension point was because of what bird poo is composed of. For those who have a fascination with guano like I do, you know that it has a high nitrogen content. And at that time, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the human population had gone through an explosive growth period. I mean, you think a little over 150 years ago, the population of the world was around 1 billion people. And there was genuine concern in the world that we did not have the agricultural infrastructure to be able to support 1 billion people. And there was a genuine, real concern that if humans kept multiplying exponentially the way we were growing, that there's no way humans would be able to sustain the growth. And it was all over fertilizer. They're like, we simply don't have access to enough fertilizer to grow enough crops to support all the humans that are being born. And then enters the Monopoly Man. Not really. I just think he looks like the Monopoly Man. He's a guy named Fritz Habner. And Fritz Habner comes up with this crazy notion. He says, you know what? You know what else has a lot of nitrogen? Not guano. Air. Like, nitrogen is one of the primary chemical components in air. What if we could pull the nitrogen out of the air and make fertilizer? And people were like, that sounds like medieval magic, right? Like, that's crazy. You can't pull nitrogen out of the air and make fertilizer. And Fritz Habner figures out how to do it. I won't bore you with the specifics. It's quite fascinating. But he figures out how to take nitrogen from the air and turn it into ammonia, which is the base for what becomes fertilizer. And Fritz Habner does the incredible. He ends up winning the Nobel Peace Prize because his invention paves the way for a 7-fold increase in agriculture and the ability to grow crops globally in places that could not have grown. It is not a small thing to say that Fritz Habner saved the lives of billions of people, which is extraordinary. But there's something else you need to know about Fritz Habner. Obviously, he was a brilliant chemist. He was a Jewish German chemist who had a strong patriotic sense. And so when World War I happened, he felt that he should apply his brain to winning the war. And so what he does is he goes in the laboratory, and with the same mind that generated the idea of pulling nitrogen out of the air, he creates mustard gas. He is the father of chemical warfare. In one battle that he personally oversaw, with glee, actually, he witnessed the death of 67,000 Allied soldiers as his chemical warfare bombs were dropped and the gas began to suffocate them. And he was proud. It destroyed his family because his wife could not live with the tension that her husband saw his ability to create darker and darker chemical compounds to kill more and more people as a good thing. So it destroyed his first marriage, his second marriage. It destroyed his relationship with his kids. His life just completely untwined. And today, what's even more tragic is, as a German Jew, at the end of World War I, he watched the rise of the Nazi powers. And he realized very quickly, I am not going to be welcomed in this new Germany. And he fled. And Fritz Habner had created compounds that would end up being the compounds pumped into gas chambers during the Holocaust that would kill over 1 million Jews. So Fritz Habner, the man who created a world for billions and massacred at least 1 million. It's a tension that you feel with his life. And his life is this really grand tragedy. His life is a life that not many of us even know about. But what I think his life does at a very grand, dramatic scale is illustrates the challenge of living a life well done. You see, any of us can have a good day. Any of us can live a life and make a choice. I mean, I can choose to go to the gym and eat a salad today. But that doesn't change my life. I can choose to not hit buy now on Amazon today, but that doesn't change my finances. I can have a moment where I choose to be honest, but that doesn't break the addiction. Right? There has to be the challenge of, man, I want to live a life well done. I want to live a life filled with better decisions and fewer regrets, like Dallas talked about last week. We can make that decision today. But there is this whole current working against us that will prevent us from living it out tomorrow. And my desire for you is not that you would have well done today, but that you would have well done over all of your days. Because it's really easy to show up and do something great sporadically. It's really hard to do it every day. And if you want to do it every day, fortunately for us, there is a way. And specifically, there's a story that Jesus told. A story that I would argue, based on how Jesus frames it, is the parable of all his parables. It's the story that gives us insight to all of his stories. And the reason I can claim that is because of how he sets it up. So in Mark chapter 4, Jesus is teaching by the lake. And the crowd that gathered around him was so large that he had to get into a boat, and he sat out on the lake while all the people were along the shore at the water's edge. Now, this is fascinating. This is called the Bay of the Sower because it's a hillside that goes up. It's a natural amphitheater. And Jesus, because he made physics, understood the physics. And so as people are sitting down, he says, hey, give me your boat. And he pushes out in the water, and he creates a natural microphone. So he's able to speak to thousands of people sitting along the hillsides. And it says that he taught them many things by parables, stories. Like Jesus was a phenomenal storyteller. Like if I could invent a time machine, this is where I would go. Like I would just want to sit and listen to him. Like not only could tell a story, he could tell a burn, man. Like where it's like boom, bam, got you. And people are like, oh, like what? You know, it's like slam. And so in his teachings, he said, listen. Now, this was not like Jesus was not saying this in English, clearly. So in the language of his day, it's translated us in English in a way that's super helpful with listen, exclamation mark. Okay, this is a really important thing Jesus does here, and you'll see the other side of it in a second. He's commanding them, lean into what I'm about to tell you. He's commanding them, hey, focus on what I'm about to say. Because he realizes how important focus is. And he says, a farmer went out to sow a seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell in the rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, so that they did not bear grain. Still, other seed fell on good soil. It came up, grew up, and produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, and some 100 times. So Jesus is telling a story that for his audience, not so much for this audience, would have been instantly visualized. They're an agrarian. This is a rural area of Israel at the time. They knew farming. They knew what farming looked like. And this is a little different than how we farm today. Right? We live in a day and age of commercial grade farming. And even honestly, if you're a gardener, without even knowing it, you employ commercial grade farming techniques that are very modern, that were just simply not present in this day. Right? You would lay fertilizer that was specifically designed for the plants that you want to grow in your garden. You have already created the rows. You would have already cultivated and bought the plants that are perfectly designed for the sunlight that's going to hit that spot. Like you employ so much knowledge that you take for granted. Back then, the goal was to get seed on the ground, and then you would come along behind it and plow, which is the opposite of how we do. We typically plow the ground, prepare the ground, then drop the seed. But for them in that day, in that age, with animals and with human labor and the way things were done, you would go along, you would throw the seed as much as you could get out on the ground, because it was a numbers game. Then you would come along and you would plow the ground and have the ground cover up the seed. Now, there are parts of Israel that were, the ground was actually pretty soil-wise, pretty shallow. Underneath it was limestone. And so you might come along and plow it and only to discover that you throw up stones that cover the ground because limestone's just underneath the surface a few inches. And so Jesus is telling a story that they all instantly understand on the surface. But they understand Jesus has said something because he finishes it with this. Then Jesus said, whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. He's kind of saying, hey, did you get it? Did you get what I just said? Have you ever been to an escape room? Right, where you walk in and the doors close and they're like, you got an hour. And the whole thing is, do you get it? Do you get that there's something in this room that's going to unlock something in this room, that's going to unlock another room, that's going to unlock another room, that eventually is going to get you out and make you feel smart? Okay? Like, he's telling them, I've just taken you into a room. Can you get out of it? And so they all know, man, this is tricky. Jesus has just told us a story that we all understand, but we don't understand. And he's doing it on purpose because Jesus understands something that Stephen Greenspan wrote a book about, is that human beings are our own worst enemy. So Stephen Greenspan, he's a professor in Colorado. He writes a book called The Annals of Gullibility, where he documents how gullible human beings are, how we fall into the trap of self-deception more than any other deception. Do you realize the best deceiver in your life is not the person emailing you who claims to be a prince of a foreign country, right? Or somebody who has Bitcoin that's willing to give it to you if you just give all your personal information. Like the biggest deception is not the person calling you spam. The biggest deceiver in your life is the one you see in the mirror every single day, who tells you it's okay, that it's all right, one more is okay, that you deserve it. Well, they deserve what you said to them. No, you don't need to say I'm sorry. She got what she had coming. Like, that's the biggest deceiver in our life. It's you and me. And Stephen Greenspan writes a brilliant book about why we get duped, because we're default to dupe, and how we can avoid it. And in true ironic fashion, in history that you should know, 2 days after his book was published, he received a letter that informed him that 1/3 of his retirement savings had been lost. He had invested with Bernie Madoff, and Bernie Madoff had taken 1/3 of his life savings. The expert on gullibility had been gullible. You can't make that up. And Jesus knew that about our makeup, that we are so good at deceiving ourselves and being deceived, that even the guy who's the expert on deception ends up investing with Bernie Madoff, the biggest criminal Ponzi scheme crook in U.S. history. And so this is why he tells him a story. He tells him a story because he understands, I want to get this story lodged in so that I can begin to make their brain turn and think and reflect in ways they haven't reflected before. So naturally, this creates tension, especially with his disciples, because they all understand Jesus has told them a story and they don't get it. And they're supposed to get it. Like, they're his followers. They're his boys. They're his trainees. And they're all sitting around arguing because they don't understand. And Jesus says to them, don't you understand this parable? Don't you get the story I just... And they're like, no, we don't. And they're mad. And he says, how then will you understand any parable? You see, because Jesus has told this story at the very beginning of all the other stories he's going to tell, because this is the key to understanding so many of his other stories. It's the reason he commands listen on the front and on the back. And in that day and that age, that's a very significant way of communicating this is really, really important. It's the equivalent of bold and italicize and big bolder head like font. This story is really important. He's like, if you don't understand this one, you're not going to get any of the other ones, I say. And then he says, okay, let me explain what the story is really about. Because a parable is a unique story where normally it's a symbolic story. God's usually present, and we're usually present. And God's the smart one, and we're usually not. And it's usually revealing something about our nature that gets in the way of us seeing God in his nature. And so he says, the farmer sows the word. And the word is like truth. Jesus' teaching, what Jesus has unpacked, what he said, the life he's living. He's like, the farmer sows the word. So that's what the seed represents, he says. Some people are like seed along the path where the word is sown. And as soon as they hear it, Satan comes in, takes the word that was sown in them. And maybe that for your ears, you're like, I don't understand. Like Satan, the devil comes in and is like, boop, pluck, and runs away. Like, no, I don't know, maybe. But it's probably a little bit more like what we've all experienced when what Jesus is saying here, with the reality of, have you ever said something to someone that was like, hey, I need help, and it went in one ear and out the other? You ever told your child to do something? And what you experienced is what psychologists call functional stupidity. That's an actual term, and it's where in the midst of all of their brain growth, things that go in, the neurons, they just don't reach the end of the path, right? If you have a middle schooler, I'm telling you that one teaching, that it'll change your world, because functional stupidity is every day. You'll be like, did you do this? What did you say? 5 minutes later, they're staring in the mirror. Did you brush your teeth? No, I was noticing my hair. You're like, I told you to brush your teeth 3 times. That's called functional stupidity. And it's their little brain. It's like, and it just never reaches the place it was supposed to go. Okay, so at least they have a semi-excuse. For most of us, it's just human nature. Things go in, we don't want to hear it, and it goes out. That's also called teenagers, and that's also called adults. That's called toddlers. That's called being human, right? Like, we all have that. My wife can tell you I suffer from the same sickness, okay? Usually involving milk or cheese or other items that we need in our house that just never make it because I was supposed to be the one to shuttle it home, okay? So this is what he's referring to. It's just our tendency to, we hear it, we even might ask for it, but then we just let it pass straight through. And then he says, others are like seeds sown on rocky places. They hear the word, and at once they receive it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. And this is kind of like the people who have a crisis faith, right? As a pastor, I see this a lot where people who have no faith, all of a sudden their marriage falls apart, or they lose their job, or they get a diagnosis, or something happens that's kind of cataclysmic, and it's destructive, and it's shocking, and it's maybe it's a car wreck that makes them question the brevity of life, and all of a sudden they're like, I need to get serious about faith and life, right? I mean, I've seen couples, it's when one of them looks at the other and says, I'm done, where that one decides, oh, maybe I should start to get serious about this thing. That's the kind of crisis that he's talking about here. It's like, oh, the soil, man, it hits, and people are in a place, and they're desperate for it. So they grab hold of it. But the problem with a crisis faith is when you're not in crisis, it tends to also go out the window. Right? It's like, well, and which is why with marriages that becomes an issue. It's like, hey, if you're only going to fight for this thing when they say they're leaving, then you know what? You probably need to reorient how you're doing it, because if you do it well, then hopefully they decide to not leave, but then you're going to check out. That doesn't work. So this crisis faith kind of thing, he says, look, they don't last. It's only a short time. And I've seen that. People who come in and they're really zealous because, man, God showed up and he answered my prayer, and then they go back to life as normal, and then they go back to the old life. And they give up on what they could have had as a new one. And he says there's others who are like seeds sown among the thorns. They hear the word, but the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, the desire of other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful. And he's like, there's just some people, this other soil, where it's just like life happens. And they forget. And they get distracted. And they start to drift. He's like, that's this other group. And what ultimately ends up happening is they become unfruitful. And it's like they started off strong, they looked good, but in the end, it just didn't work out. And there's this fourth soil that we'll talk about in a second that he tells that's actually the good one, where things grow and they multiply. Remember the 30, 60, 100 times. What I think Jesus was doing with this soil discussion that was brilliant, actually, was he was giving us not just a picture, but a path of how to live our lives, how we can hear well done, not just for one day, but all of our days. But you have to understand, I think Jesus understood something about compound interest that most of us have never thought about. We've all heard about the power of compound interest, right? You put a little bit in, and man, over time, it can turn into something significant. It can grow and grow and grow, and it's not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6x. It's that 30, 60, 100. I think Jesus knew that there's a shadow side of compound interest, and it's the thing that gets into our life and does more destruction than anything else. It's the greatest enemy to us living the compound interest life that we were meant to live in our faith, in our relationships, in our finances, and how we live out our professional world. He's like, look, I want to give you this path, and the path, the goal is to get to the end of your days, and you've got a harvest of 30, 60, 100. That it's not even measurable how your life has impacted the lives of other people, and the impact that who you are, and the character of who you are, and your children and your grandchildren, like all of that. That's the goal where we're headed, but there's some things that can get in the way. And so before we get excited about the compound interest, I need to warn you, there's something called compound disinterest too. And that is a bigger enemy to your life. That this is more destructive to your journey than any other thing. Because most of us are afraid of the disasters that will hit us. But I've lived long enough, and I've sat enough from across the table for most people to realize that like disasters aren't the common thing that destroy people's lives that happen overnight. It's the things that happen over decades, over months. That's the thing. It's not the one date. It's the relationship with the person you should have never been with. That's where the destruction actually happens. Because interest and disinterest both compound. And this shows up. This is the thing, if I just be really frank with you, there is a reason. If my daughter wants to talk about Taylor Swift, okay, when I frankly do not care about Taylor Swift, can I just say that out loud and not be judged? Okay? Like there's one other, I know some of you want to stab me right now. And it's okay, I accept that. But you know what? Like, as a 42-year-old man, you know what I was doing last night? I was sitting at the table with my daughter, talking about music, and her showing me Taylor Swift songs that she liked. Okay? There is a version of me that would say, I would rather you nair my entire body with acid. But I did it. And the reason I did it is because I am terrified of this. Because I know that if my daughter sees me disinterested, that will compound. And that I want her to want to talk about the things she's excited about in her life. Even if I'm not excited about those things in my life. Now, let me just say to the people who are Swifties, who I've greatly offended, I do not want to mobilize that army. Taylor Swift is a brilliant, brilliant woman. She is an incredible artist, songwriter. She is a businesswoman that I think should be celebrated and applauded. People appreciate her artistry, but they should appreciate her business acumen because I think she is an even better businesswoman than she is a singer-songwriter. All right? That girl just ticked 1 billion. All right? So respect is given, okay? So hopefully that appeases you. Please don't come after me. Okay? But the point is compound disinterest is a scary thing. And it shows up in marriages. It shows up in relationships. It shows up in our job. And Jesus understood this will mess you up. This will cause you to wake up one day and realize, I've lost my 20-year-old. This will cause you to wake up one day, decades into a job you hate, and they finally let you go. Like, this is just this thing that Jesus recognized. And then the scariest thing is the most devastating effects is in our faith. He says, so let me tell you the two areas, right, just to sum it up in the story. He said, trouble and thorns. Like, those were the two things that he said, here's where compound disinterest gets into and just starts messing us up. Here are the things that get in the way of the path towards where we want to move. Okay? I actually, because alliteration, I change it to difficulty and distractions. Because my brain can just kind of wrap my head around that a little bit. Because I'm not an agrarian person thinking rocks and thorns. But I get difficulty and I get distractions. And he says, these are the things where compound disinterest shows up. And so, naturally, the soils are a picture of your soul. Right? Remember, at the end of the day, he says, it's you and it's me. That the story he told, the reason it's such a critical story to all the other stories is it's a mirror. It's a mirror that gives us a picture of our own life. It's a mirror you can hold up to yourself and ask yourself, where am I in the journey? If the four soils are a path and they're a picture, where am I in this picture? And it gives you a powerful, like, we're all going to have a realization one day at the end of our life. Just, can I be honest? Speaking as a person who, I'm not in heaven, but I can see heaven from where I am. Okay? I've done a lot of self-reflection about my life. I've done a lot of self-reflection about the choices I've made, about the relationship I have with people in my family. I have done a full self-assessment. Because that's what you do when you get to a place where the doctor looks at you and tells you, get your affairs in order. Okay? And I had this realization. All of us are going to have that realization. And I want to have that realization. I'm so grateful that I had it now. And I want you to have that realization now. Because the tragedy is oftentimes most of us don't until it's too late. Until past the point where we've lost a relationship or we're over and our life is done and we're staring at Jesus. He's no longer a name that we hear sung about. He's a face we're looking at. And I want you to have that. And that's what the four soils do. They give us a picture of our soul, where we are today. And so one of them, around the difficulty, around this like trouble piece, is a simple question. Is there something you're going through that could derail you? Is there something that you're doing to you that could derail you? Is there something you've allowed into your life? Is there a person you've allowed into your life? Is there a school subject that you are ignoring in your life that has the potential to derail you and prevent you from getting where you want to go to? Like, that's the beauty of the soils, is it's a mirror that says, what's in my way of me walking out this way? Because there are scary things that creep into our life. Look, I've sat across from enough people who've gone through addictions to tell you that it's never the first time. It's never the second time or the third time. No one thinks they're an addict when they're just sitting there. They've got a reason. They've got an excuse for why they can do what they're doing, and the reason it doesn't have them, they have it. Okay? But it's not just true about addictions. It's true about bad relationships. It's true about bad financial decisions. Like, you spend 1 or 2% over what you make a month, and eventually one day you look up and you are crushed by debt. If you're a freshman in high school, you keep sliding on the things that you should not be sliding on, and then you get to your senior year and a GPA is not fixable with 1 or 2 classes. Right? And so the question is there something you're doing? Is there something in your life, around your life, a person in your life that has the potential to derail you? And if you are wise, do something about it now. Not wait for the destruction later. That's why, I talk about the compound disinterest and the fear. If there is one area that I'm really zoomed in, and my wife was really hyper zoomed in, it's in the relationships in my daughter's world. Because I realize as a middle schooler, the relationship she has around her has a lot of power and influence in her life. And I know that she is not smart enough yet. She has not lived enough times around the sun to notice and see scrubs the way I can. Okay? I know some of us are good at spotting losers, right? And let's just be real. When I was a middle schooler, I was not good at spotting losers. As a high schooler, I was not good at spotting losers. Some of you are. I've worked with middle school and high school students, and there are some really smart ones who see the losers coming. But as a parent of a middle schooler, I am really focused on making sure that the losers do not hitch their wagon to my daughter's train, because I know they have the potential to derail her. And then there's the second thing, which is actually, I think, the scarier but more powerful question. This is around the drifting and the distraction. Is there an area of your life where you're drifting a little bit? Where you're starting to, it's not a lot, it's just a little bit. You know, well, I used to have like a devotional time, but now, you know, it's not as regular as it used to be. I used to go to the gym, but that's not as much of my schedule now. It's like, where are you drifting? Is there a relationship in your life where you're drifting? Is date night drifting? Is like sister time drifting? Is father-daughter time drifting? Like, it could be anything. But is there an area where it's drifting? And then what areas are you distracted? Because I think if there's any area where compound disinterest does the most destruction, it's in the area of distraction. Where we double down at work because, you know what? I don't know if I feel like I can win at home right now because I don't understand what's happening, but I can win at work. So I'm going to give work 5 more hours this week. I'm going to give work 10 more hours this week. Or I'm going to give my hobby. Some of us, it's like, well, I don't feel like I can win at work. But you know what I really can feel like I'm winning at? Let me just golf. So let me just press into that. And it's not a bad thing. Hear me. Like, look, distractions rarely are bad things. Sometimes they're good things. And I'm not saying get rid of them. I'm just saying put them in their proper place. If there's an area of your life you're distracted, look, if you take off from Boston and the pilot in the cockpit makes a mistake and his instrument panel is off by 1% and he's headed to LA, guess what? You don't land in LA, you land in Mexico. Because that's what 1% does over a distance. That's what distraction does over days that turn into months, that turn into years, that turn into decades. I've sat with people who were dying in their 80s who had lived their life distracted, and they had thought they were focused on the right things, and their wife, their kids are not in the room because they got distracted. They got a nice car, but guess what? The kids that don't like them are going to get that car. They're going to be buried with it. And so Jesus' teaching is powerful. It's not pleasant. But he's trying to save us the pain of regret now while we can still do something about it. Not the pain of regret later when we can. And so where are you drifting? Where are you distracted? I can't answer it for you. But I know this is the way. This is the story that Jesus told so that you and I can walk in that way. And now that I've given you questions that can mess your day up, let me give you a reason why it's worth it. Others, he said, are like seeds sown on a good soil, who hear the word, accept it, and produce a crop, some 30, some 60, some 100 times what was sown. The reason this matters is because if we become people who regularly become aware of not just the compound disinterest in our life, but the reason why compound interest matters so much, then we can actually start to live a life filled with better decisions, fewer regrets. We can get to the end of our high school career. We can get to the end of our single season. We can get to the end of raising our kids. We can get to the end of our life and look back on that chapter and say, wow, I did it. It was worth it. It was hard. But look what I saw. Look what came out of that. And for some of us, if I can just be honest with you, I know these questions are hard because you're like, man, those would have been great questions when I was just getting started in that chapter, but I'm at the end of that chapter, and now I have the pain of regret starting to wash over me now, and I can't do anything about it. And I would simply say, that's not true. There's this brilliant quote by Jim Rohn: you can't change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction. Like, I understand it may be painful to look at where you are right now. But that doesn't mean that you have to stay there. That doesn't mean that has to be where you go forever. That yes, you can't change your destination overnight. You can't change the relationship that you've built over decades overnight. But you can change the direction of that relationship tonight. You can change the direction of your finances tonight. You can change the direction today. I don't need to give you stories of Colonel Sanders who invents KFC towards the end of his life. You don't need to hear that. Because the most significant things aren't those kind of things. What I want to remind you of as we wrap up is that we serve a God of the resurrection who is able to step into our lives today and do immeasurably more, do unfathomably more with our yes today than we did with our no's over the last decade. That he is a God of redemption who can step into your marriage and change the storyline. He's a God of redemption who can step into your school right now and change the direction. He's a God who can step into your career path right now. Because he can step into your heart and do a fresh and different work. One that is stronger and greater than the difficulties you're facing, and one that's more compelling than the distractions in your life. Like, this is the way. This is why that story of the 4 soils mattered. Because they were a picture of our soul. But they were also a path for our soul. That regardless of where we were in it, that you and I could decide, by the grace of God, with the power of Jesus working in our life, that I am going to be a person of the 4th soil. Not the 3rd, not the 2nd, not the 1st. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the 4 soils, for that parable that you told that has the power to change our lives. I pray that you would help us in being able to take a step back in our lives and to be honest with ourselves and to see the questions. God, that you would give us clarity to be able to know the areas where we're drifting, to be able to give us the insight to know the areas where we're distracted, and that you would meet us where we are today to help us change the direction that we're headed. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. So we want to end with a song that I think is just a powerful reminder. Whether you're wrestling through 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, wherever you may be, whatever question you're processing through, I just want to remind you as we wrap up with this song today that, God is a firm foundation. And that if we build, that what you build on is actually more important than what you build. Because what you build on determines how long it will last, what you actually build. Something great built on something that has no foundation will eventually fall apart. It'll crack, it'll give way. And so this is just a song that's a reminder in the midst of all this of like, hey, we're trying to move towards a life filled with better decisions, fewer regrets, not just a well done, good, and faithful today, but a well done over all our days. And that the first step in doing that is building our life on him. He's our foundation. And as someone who's walking through a season where, everything got shaken and fell, I'm telling you, it's really good to know your foundation is true and strong and big and is harder and tougher than life's harder and tougher moments. And so I want to invite you to stand if you're able and join with our team in this powerful song called Firm Foundation.
Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause he's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. No, he won't.
I still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I built my life on Jesus. He's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would he fail now? He won't. Yeah. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail.
Christ is my firm foundation. Sing it out.
The rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause he's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? 'Cause he won't.
No, he won't.
He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't.
Do you believe that, church?
He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail.
He won't.
No, he won't. He's never failed. He's never failed. He won't today.
Sing this next part if you know it. Sing it with us. Rain came
when everything around me is shaking. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus. 'Cause He's never let me down. He's faithful to generations. So why would He fail now? He won't.
He won't fail.
He won't.
He's not gonna fail in your marriage.
He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't.
He's not gonna fail in your family.
He won't.
He won't fail in your finances.
He won't fail. He won't fail.
Good. I'm like so glad that thing's there because I was like bouncing and jumping and nobody saw that. Because it is so good to know He won't. Right? Just, I mean, that's it. He won't. He won't fail. And it's just beautiful when we get, as a church, when we kind of carry in that spirit. And I just want to say personally, thank you as, not as a pastor, but just a part of this church for last Sunday night. For those who are here, it was just powerful. I've led this church for 7 years, and I have to say, honestly, standing here when people were praying over us, I felt led by this church. And I was so proud to be a part of this church. And it's humbling. And so thank you for those who were here, for those who couldn't be, but you were praying, for those in the team who made this, and which is a little prayer bracelet. And so if you want one, we have some left over. We'd love to give to you. It's just something I wear. It's just a reminder, not that I need it to pray for me, but it's just a reminder of you who's praying for me and who you're praying to, who's bigger than me, who's bigger than the diagnosis inside of me. And it's just, so thank you. It really was special. And to be personal, thank you for those who stepped in when I challenged you a few weeks ago to be generous and say, hey, really would love to see you start leaning in and giving more, giving regularly, and automating your giving, because practically it changes our family. And so this week, I'll be connecting with Dana Farber to be onboarded with them, which is super exciting, because you gave. And so personally, from behalf of my family, thank you for that. That makes a real difference and could end up saving my life. And so, but it's bigger. What we were a part of is bigger than us, which is why I'm holding this. As you leave today, if you haven't picked up one, I want to challenge you to grab an Operation Christmas Child box, because there's little hands, little hearts on the other side of this thing that's going to get it in a few weeks, and we want to be able to show that love very practically and tangibly to them. And so, if you haven't grabbed one, or if you've just grabbed one, you're like, you know what, I want to grab two. I can do $10 more. We have a few more of the boxes left, so on the way out you can grab hold of it. And a cool thing about the church is that not only did we want to just lead generosity in how we do this, we were like, hey, we want to help other churches, other organizations, mobilizing their generosity. So we're actually a collection center for this region. So we're able to have other people who maybe aren't connected to any churches but believe in this. They're able to come here, drop their boxes off. So if you're interested in being a part, we need volunteers this week. And the goal is you just sit hot chocolate in our foyer and take boxes. I mean, and then put them in a container. It's really simple, but it's just you get to be a face and a picture of who we are as a church, but ultimately who we serve. And so if you're interested in serving, you can scan the QR code. You can talk to Justin Gifford. He can give you more details as well. If you're like on the fence about it, he can sell you very clearly on why you should, all right? And so I want to say thank you for being here today. It's really was such a powerful day. And I love that I get to speak, even if you don't love it. And so it was an honor to be able to speak and teach And so next week, we're going to continue the series. Really excited about it. And I hope to see you here next Sunday. God bless you. All right.